In 2021, a quiet American suburb learned the truth too late. They had been living next door to a ghost, a man who technically didn't exist. This is the story of how one neighborhood discovered the stranger living among them wasn't a stranger at all. The perfect neighbor, Lakefield Grove, was a definition of calm. Trimmed lawns, friendly waves. The kind of town where porch lights meant safety. So when Mr. David Harper moved into House 47A, nobody questioned it. He smiled. He mowed his lawn. He baked cookies for the block party. But here's the first strange detail. No one ever saw him go to work. His car never moved. His lights never turned off. And yet every month, his bills were paid exactly on time. It was Mrs. Carter, the neighborhood's unofficial watchdog, who noticed something chilling. One evening, she waved at David from across the street. He smiled politely. The next morning, she waved again. He smiled the exact same way. Same posture, same timing, same tilt of the head. Like a replay, she brushed it off until she saw him a third time, and he repeated the same smile again. Word started spreading. He's friendly, but something's off. One night in November, a scream shook the street. House 49, the neighbors, had been broken into. Nothing was stolen, but the intruder left muddy footprints leading directly to the backyard of House 47A, David Harper's house. Police knocked on his door. No answer. They circled the home and found a basement window cracked open. They called for backup. When officers entered the basement, they expected a suspect. Instead, they found an old hospital bed, restraints attached, a wall full of newspaper clippings, and worst of all, dozens of photos of the neighborhood. Taken at night from inside people's homes, the police finally broke into the locked bedroom. What they found made national news. Lying on the bed was a man who looked exactly like David Harper. Same eyes, same hair, same frame. But he had been dead for at least 4 years. This meant the man everyone had been waving at wasn't David Harper. He was someone else, living in the house, using the dead man's identity, studying the neighborhood like prey. Fingerprint tests later revealed he was an escaped psychiatric patient from another state, a man with a history of home invasions, but no known motive for what he did next. When police pulled security footage from the houses around him, they made a chilling discovery. The imposter didn't just watch his neighbors. He entered their homes while they slept, adjusted things, moved objects back slightly wrong. Sometimes he sat in the corner of their bedroom and watched them for hours. One clip showed him standing over a sleeping family at 3:47 a.m., smiling the same frozen smile they had all seen in daylight. He was arrested 2 days later, wandering another suburb, smiling the same way. To this day, no one knows why he chose that neighborhood or how many others he lived in before Lakefield Grove. Everyone thought the nightmare ended when the imposter was arrested. But the real horror began after he was gone. After the imposter was taken away, police sealed House 47A for investigation. Neighbors finally felt safe enough to sleep again. But safety didn't last long. On the third night after his arrest, the motion sensor on the Carter family's door camera activated at 2:11 a.m. The video showed something impossible. A shadowy figure walking out of House 47A. Even though it had no power, no keys, and was locked from the outside, the figure stood still for a full minute, facing the Carter's house, before disappearing behind the bushes. When police reviewed the footage, they assumed it was a glitch. But Mrs. Carter swore she saw someone standing at her back window around the same time. The next morning, the Carters woke up to something even more disturbing. A small white chalk mark, a single vertical line, drawn on their mailbox. Later that day, 2 more neighbors found the same mark. Police chalked it up to kids playing around until a retired detective in the neighborhood recognized it. He said the symbol was identical to markings used by burglars from the 1980s. Symbols used to identify houses based on their threat level or value, but these weren't random. Each marked house had one thing in common. They were the same houses featured in the photos found in the imposter's basement. He hadn't just watched them, he had categorized them. Investigators returned to House 47A and dug deeper into every room. They discovered something they had overlooked. A false wall in the basement behind the hospital bed. Inside was a small, concrete room filled with a ripped map of Lakefield Grove, strings linking houses to numbers, a list of names from the neighborhood, and most disturbing of all, a USB drive labeled Phase 2. On the USB were 43 short videos, clips of neighbors sleeping, clips of children's rooms, clips taken from inside bathrooms, clips from houses miles away, homes no one recognized. In almost every video, a faint breathing sound can be heard behind the camera. But here's the terrifying thing. Half the videos were recorded after the imposter had already been arrested, meaning someone else was inside these homes, or more than one person had access to House 47A. While analyzing the false room, detectives noticed a single phrase scratched into the concrete. He said you would come. Elias. Residents searched their neighborhood directory. No one knew Elias. No one ever heard the name mentioned by the imposter. Police ran the name through databases. No matches. But later that week, a chilling clue emerged. A family living 3 towns away reported a break-in. Nothing was stolen, except a single item left behind. A chalk mark identical to the ones in Lakefield Grove. A vertical line, and next to it, written in faint pencil, Elias approved. In the following days, Lakefield Grove changed forever. Pets started going missing. Doors that were locked at night were found unlocked in the morning. Children woke up claiming they saw a man in the hallway. And multiple families heard faint footsteps in their attics, even those with no attic access. The police increased patrols, but fear spread faster than safety, because whatever the imposter started, someone else was continuing. Neighborhood alarms became useless. Lights didn't matter. Security cameras caught nothing but static. And one night, around 3:17 a.m., a baby monitor recorded a whisper so soft the audio team almost missed it. You found one of us, but not all of us. And that was the moment Lakefield Grove realized they weren't dealing with one imposter. They were dealing with a network. Everyone thought the imposter was a danger, but he was only the scout. 2 days after detectives discovered the USB labeled Phase 2, Lakefield Grove woke up to something terrifying. Every house alarm in the neighborhood went off at exactly 4:03 a.m. Not random houses, not a power surge. Every alarm, every system, every brand, all triggered at the exact same second. Neighbors ran outside in panic. And that's when they realized the real threat. Not a single alarm company was receiving signals. It was as if the entire neighborhood had been cut off from the grid. The retired detective, Mr. Grayson, said the words everyone felt but didn't want to hear. This wasn't a malfunction. This was a test. A test of how long it would take the neighborhood to panic. A test of how fast police would respond. A test for something bigger. The next morning, the police returned to House 47A. Something had changed. On the basement wall, the one that held the map, someone had spray painted a symbol that wasn't there before. A vertical line, a circle, and 3 small dots arranged like a triangle. Mr. Grayson stared at it, horrified. He'd seen it before, decades ago, in a case file involving a coordinated home invasion group in Europe. They called themselves the Quiet Ones, a collective of criminals who never spoke during crimes, who infiltrated suburban neighborhoods by living among their targets, studying every household, and never taking everything at once, only what they needed. But the chilling part? There was never one of them. There was always a network. An imposter living in David Harper's house? He had used the exact same symbol on a notebook in the basement, only smaller. Detectives pulled old international files. The Quiet Ones had a pattern: select a neighborhood, plan a watcher, someone who blends in, study routines for months, mark houses based on vulnerability, trigger a panic test, move in silently in groups of 3 to 5, leave without a trace. But House 47A revealed something new. The imposter wasn't the leader. He wasn't Elias. He wasn't even a high-ranking member. He was just the evaluation piece, the lowest level in the network, which meant the others, the trained ones, the real quiet ones, were still out there, watching, already inside the neighborhood. 3 days later, Lakefield Grove went dark. Not just a power outage, not just a blown transformer, a total blackout. Street lights, gone. Home generators, disabled. Phone signals, jammed. Cars, unresponsive. The only thing working? A message broadcast on every baby monitor, radio, and smart speaker. Phase 3, extraction. Mrs. Carter screamed when she saw her baby monitor flicker. A figure was standing in her daughter's room. Tall, still, the head turned slightly toward the camera. Police rushed to the scene, but the man was gone. No prints, no forced entry. Just a circle and 3 dots drawn on the floor in chalk. The symbol of the network. Investigators brought in federal agents. They searched House 47A again, this time removing the walls. Behind the insulation, they discovered a narrow gap running the entire perimeter of the house. A gap wide enough for someone to crawl through. Every wall had holes that peered into the rooms. The imposter hadn't just been watching the neighborhood. He'd been watching himself. The network was monitoring their own scout. At the end of the crawl space, agents found something wrapped in plastic. A second phone. On it were hundreds of messages between the imposter and someone labeled E. The messages were short and cold. Stop contacting me. Stay in the house. We observe. Your job is to listen. Phase 3 begins when you are removed. And the final message, sent minutes after he was arrested. He's out. Move in. The he wasn't the imposter. It was the leader, Elias. The one who approved the marks. The one who watched from the shadows. The one who was now free to move without interference. Just when police thought they secured the neighborhood, a resident named Mia checked her attic. She hadn't been up there in years. But the ladder was already down, as if someone had been using it recently. She climbed slowly. Her flashlight shook. There, in the attic dust, she found 41 footprints. Fresh. And on the back wall, written in charcoal, "We live between your walls." And next to the writing, a small circle, 3 dots, and a new addition beneath it. 47B, her house number. Ao didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. Her mind kept replaying the sound of the woman's scream on the phone. Raw, terrified, cut off. By dawn, she made a decision. She would go back to the church. Not as a member, not as a visitor, but as a woman who deserved the truth. When she arrived, the compound was unusually quiet. Too quiet. Even the birds weren't singing. The church doors were unlocked. Inside, the lights were off, but the office at the back glowed with a faint yellow bulb. She moved slowly down the hallway. Every step echoed, like someone else was walking behind her. When she reached the office door, it was half open. Inside, someone was sitting at the desk. Ao's heart dropped. It was a pastor. But he wasn't alone. Standing behind him was the same woman she heard on the phone. The woman she thought was kidnapped, beaten, dying. Except now, she was smiling, warmly, like Ao had just walked into a surprise reunion. "Ao," the pastor said softly, "we've been expecting you." Her stomach turned. The woman stepped forward, her eyes surprisingly gentle. "I'm Grace," she said. "His first wife." Ao felt dizzy. "You're alive?" Grace nodded. "Very much alive." Ao felt anger growing in her chest. "Then who screamed last night? Who was hurt?" Pastor T's voice dropped into a whisper. "That scream wasn't from this house." Ao frowned, confused. Grace crossed her arms. "It was from your line, Ao. Someone close to you." Ao blinked. I don't understand." The pastor leaned forward, his eyes intense. "You've always believed you came here to learn about us. But what if the truth is, we brought you here to learn about you?" Chills slammed through her body. Grace walked to the drawer and pulled out a small brown envelope. She placed it gently on the desk. "Ao," she said, "open it." Her fingers trembled as she tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. And when she saw it, her knees nearly gave out. Because the woman in the picture, the one bound, gagged, and screaming, was Ao herself. But the photo was taken years ago. Ao shook her head violently. No, no, this is fake. I don't remember. Grace cut her off with a calm, chilling tone. That's why we're here, Ao. Your past came for you last night. It's time you finally stop running. The pastor pointed to a chair. Sit. You're not safe out there. Not anymore. Ao stared at both of them, heart pounding, breath shaking. Grace stepped closer. Ao, the scream you heard wasn't someone dying. She paused. It was someone remembering. Ao staggered backward, gripping the wall to steady herself. My scream? My memory? What are you talking about? Pastor T and Grace exchanged a slow, deliberate look. Grace spoke first. Ao, years ago, before you ever met him, before this church, you disappeared. Ao froze. That's impossible. I would remember something like that. No, the pastor said quietly. You wouldn't, not after what they did. Grace walked closer, her voice soft but cutting like cold metal. You were taken, kept for 9 days. The police assumed you fled the country. Your parents buried an empty coffin. Ao's breath left her body. That picture, Grace continued, was taken on the 7th day. Your captors recorded everything, but they were never found. Ao's knees weakened. She whispered, Then how did I escape? Grace paused. You didn't. Silence. The pastor leaned forward. You were rescued. By us. Ao looked up sharply. You? Why would you? Because we were also taken once, the pastor interrupted. Same group, same ritual, same screams. He swallowed hard. We formed this church to protect survivors. Quietly, from the shadows. Grace nodded. And we only approach those whose lives are in danger again. Ao shook her head. No, none of this makes sense. Grace opened her phone. She tapped something. A recording began to play. Ao heard her own voice, screaming, begging, crying, not from last night, not from a phone call, from years ago. Her vision blurred, her ears rang, the room tilted. Then she heard another voice on the recording, a deep, calm male voice she didn't recognize. Ao, the voice said, you can run, but one day I will finish what I started. The recording ended. Ao's heart stopped. That voice, she whispered. He's still alive? Pastor T nodded. And last night, he tried to reach you. Ao backed away. No, I have nothing to do with him anymore. Grace stepped forward firmly. Yes, you do. He wants closure, but not the kind you want. The pastor opened a drawer slowly. Inside was a single object, a small black key. He placed it in Ao's palm. This opens a safe house 2 hours from here. Inside, you'll find the full truth. The files, the video, everything they hid from you. Ao stared at the key like it was burning her skin. Why me? She whispered. Why now? Grace exhaled. Because he's coming back, Ao. The pastor added. And if you don't confront him, he will find you first. Ao's breathing cracked. She looked between them. Two strangers who somehow knew her darkest past better than she did. Grace gave a sad smile. You're stronger than you think. You survived him once. You can do it again. Ao closed her fingers around the key. Tight, then tighter, until her knuckles turned white. She didn't feel like a victim anymore. She felt like someone rebuilding a memory brick by brick, even if each one cut her hands open. She stood up. I'm going to the safe house. The pastor nodded. We'll follow at a distance, but this fight is yours now. Ao turned toward the door. Just as she reached it, Grace called out, Ao. She looked back. Grace's eyes were soft and afraid. Whatever you find in there, just remember one thing. Ao swallowed. What? Grace's voice trembled. You weren't his only survivor. The pastor added quietly. You were the only one who escaped. Ao felt her heart drop like a stone, but she didn't turn back. She walked out, into the night, into the truth, into the memory waiting for her.